by attacking DEI. So we're going to get into that conversation first. And y'all know how we do. Who knows how the rest of the show go. But we'll start off here and get your thoughts on this conversation with Professor James Small.
Why is Trump making such a loud outcry against DEI despite it being a relatively powerless program? What about it poses a threat to him and his base?
And interesting question, and a good question, because a lot of times, what do I always ask y'all? I always ask y'all, like, why are Black people making such a big deal out of DEI being shut down? But the gentleman doing the interview, he actually started off by talking to asking Professor James Small, why is Trump making it a big deal? I always say, why are Black people making a big deal if it's supposedly on the surface, from a symbolic standpoint, designed to help us? However, y'all know how I feel about that. But he asked Professor James Small, like, well, why is Trump trying to shut it down if it actually is something that has been helping a lot of white people, and white people have been benefiting from it? So I think that's a good question to ask.
The base of the present government led by Mr. Trump is the working class, the unemployed, and the unemployable white class, as well as the lower middle class, probably even the middle class whites, who feel threatened by any real competition coming from any other racial or ethnic groups. And since the largest racial or ethnic group in the country, people could say it's Hispanics, but no, most of the Hispanics in the country are not citizens, so you can't say they're competition, because they can do what they're doing right now, put them on a plane and fly them out. They can't do that to the Black American population. So we are the primary competition for white male Americans. And so you, the white male Americans, you've created a problem for the white working class and the white underclass, but you want to make them think that Blacks have created that problem. So you attack DEI as though that was an instrument that gave Blacks an advantage over whites.
But my question would be, so you're saying that he's playing white folk to appear as if something is giving Black people an advantage, even though it's really not giving Black people an advantage, but he's saying it more so from a standpoint that how people perceive it. He doesn't believe that Trump wants white people to be perceived as, he'd rather them think that white people, the reason why they're unemployed or the reason why they may not be getting certain positions that they're getting is because a lot of these positions are being given to Black people or other people through DEI. And he's saying that to keep up that appearance, he'll attack DEI. But my question would be is, if you really thought that DEI was helping white people, as I believe Professor James Small is saying, and a lot of people have said, it helps certain demographics or certain parts of the certain like white women, gay white men. I believe that those are the main groups that it helps. Is it the fact that Trump's not interested in helping those people and elevating those groups? If the DEI was helping, I don't know, straight white men, I guess Trump may be looking at it differently. So I'm not really sure where Professor James Small, when he asked his position on this, I'm not sure if I agree. I'm not sure if I disagree, but it would be very hard for me to believe that if there actually was a program put in place and if it was benefiting a certain demographic of people, that Trump would shut it down. Yeah, I think it's out of that particular demographic group, or out of the larger demographic group, there's only helping certain particular groups. And I don't know. I'm kind of confused on this one.
And that's really what he's doing. They know that the people who have profited most by DEI is white people. But they don't know that because the people they're trusting is telling them just the opposite. If you want to find out who's getting the preference in the jobs, it's still white people and primarily white women right now. Right? You want to find out who's getting the food stamps, it's white women. You want to find out who's the majority on welfare, it's still white people.
Now, obviously, that's a little bit misleading when you say that the majority of white people are, or most of the people that get welfare are white people. There's a lot more in this country. But yeah, he's not talking rates. He's just talking overall numbers.
But they don't want to accept that about themselves. You really have to show them that they're told that Black people are getting all these advantages because of DEA. They're being given jobs they're not qualified for, what they don't deserve. And that's why you're unemployed.
I don't think that, and I know this is the question that I have. Is it being racialized in this convo, even with Professor James Small? Because when Trump attacks, let's say, for instance, the helicopter situation, the helicopter crash, unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that was not somebody black. So attacking DEI from that standpoint had nothing to do with race. I believe the pilot was a trans woman. So if Trump's attacking DEI using that example, then it would have absolutely nothing to do with race. But I think because race is the most emotional thing that will grab our attention, us having that conversation, perhaps people's perception when they hear Donald Trump complaining about DEI, or they hear Republicans who are, of course, supposed to be the white supremacists of the world when it comes to how we grow up, maybe that is why we're so attaching race to it more so than anything else. I don't know. Let's keep going.
Because they don't want them to know you're unemployed because we've sent all of the factories overseas to get cheap labor.
Fact.
And that's why you're unemployed. But
He just brought up a great point that I want to repeat when he's talking about you're not unemployed because of DEI. You're unemployed because we're sending all of these factories out of the country for cheap labor. I want y'all to pay attention to that because we're going to talk about another point.
Because we've sent all of the factories overseas to get cheap labor.
Fact.
And that's why you're unemployed.
A lot of people have gotten upset when it comes to Trump increasing tariffs, saying that that's going to increase the prices. I believe there was a situation where I think it was John Deere. We played it on this show where he was actually at an event for John Deere, and he heard that John Deere was taking one of their factories to Mexico because it would be cheaper on John Deere's part to obviously have labor produce the product and then sell it to America. And Trump got upset and said, nah, if you do that, we're putting tariffs because you're taking jobs out of this country. So I'm not sure that we're realizing or understanding what the priority should be, especially when it comes to a lot of these conversations on Trump raising tariffs, because what are most people just going to think? Oh, the price is just going to go up. Okay, if Trump raises tariffs and he uses that to incentivize companies to have more factories in the United States, to hire more Americans, what you're doing is you're feeding the economy. So let's say that you're spending more for a particular product. Okay, you're spending more for a particular product, but the value of your dollar is going to be higher because now you're recirculating that dollar back into the economy that you participate in, rather than to send that money out to another country's economy by purchasing their product. So let's say that you're paying a little bit more for this product that's American made now instead of that's made in China. You're recirculating your dollars into the community. It's almost as if, let's say you have a neighborhood, you have a little neighborhood, a little community where your family, you guys rely on each other for different things, where you may purchase certain products from this person, different people in the family have different businesses. Once that dollar leaves the family, even if you're paying less, now you're not feeding your family's economy, to where if you feed your family's economy, now that money that you're paying, you don't mind paying that money because it's going to come right back to your family. It's going to come right back to help you in selling your product. So you may pay more to buy that product from your cousin, but you know that by feeding the overall family economy and family bank, that now your cousin has the ability to spend more on your product, rather than to say, okay, we'll just spend that money outside and get it cheaper. You're not building up your economy. You're shrinking your economy. You're devaluing the dollar in your economy. You get what I'm saying? So that's kind of how my mind's working. Maybe I'm a little bit off. You guys tell me how you're seeing it.
But rather they're going to say, no, you're unemployed because this DEA is giving black and brown people an advantage that puts them above you.
What's
now,
up, Honest?
When they realize that's not true, his 4 years will be over. And he won't be able to run for president again anyway. So he would have used and gotten white people to vote against their own self-interest one more time.
See, and this is a blanket statement to say that. So he's saying that white people going against DEI is voting against their self-interest. I don't see it as that. I don't see it as that. Maybe because we're Black and a lot of the women run our households. And so we think that by creating an opportunity using DEI that pushes and gives white women certain opportunities that doesn't prioritize the white men, or it gives the gay white men opportunities, because with DEI, obviously they're pushing a lot of the LGBTQ, a lot of the women, a lot of the minorities down the line, they end up benefiting up. But initially it's the white women and I believe gay white men. So Professor James Small is saying that it's hustling backwards for Donald Trump and a lot of Republicans to try to shut down DEI because it's helping them. I do not think that they believe that that's helping them. Even if it's pushing and elevating white women to a certain standpoint, I do not think that that's helping them. And I do not think that they see it as just an overall, all whites, we're all the same. I do not think, and in certain cases, maybe. But when it comes to this, I do not think so. I think that they see the woke versus conservative, liberal versus conservative. And Malcolm X was one of the people that used to always speak on this, where he would say there's no Democrat versus Republican. There's liberal versus conservative. So when you get a white politician, Black politician, but we'll talk about a white politician right now, when you have a guy like Trump who's against the woke ideologies, who's against the progressive liberal ideologies, the agendas that they're pushing, I do not think that they just say, well, if it's elevating this white woman who falls under this liberal umbrella, that's elevating all white people. I do not think that they look at it like that. I definitely don't. Maybe Professor James Small is looking at it because that's how we've been tricked to see things, that we've been tricked to just align with whatever it is our race is doing. Oh, yeah. Oh, it benefits the gay Black person. All right, it benefits us. And we'll push it. We'll get behind things just based on them being racialized. I do not think that other cultures look at those the same. I think other cultures prioritize the actual cultural aspect, the actual influence that a way of life is going to have. They prioritize the agenda. They'll prioritize, like, hold on, that's conservative, this liberal. No, we're going this way. Not even, that's just my understanding, my view of it. Maybe I'm a little off. And I saw a couple comments coming in. And please make sure that y'all like. That's going to help boost the algorithm. So shout out to Honest, just came in the building. Jablowski, shout out to Jablowski. Trump's the best president of all time. Once it's over, he'll go down as one of the greatest men that has ever lived. I don't know if he's the best president of all time right now, if I'd say that. But I agree with your second statement that once it's all over, he'll go down as one of the greatest men that has ever lived. I agree with that. I agree with that. And maybe right after this interview that we're reviewing, we're going to get into, so I'm not sure if you heard earlier, Jablowski, which I wrote down a lot of the things that Trump has accomplished just since being elected. And I want to just review them. I want to review them with y'all. People that like Trump, people that hate Trump, people that love Trump, whatever it may be. I want to share my thoughts on it. And then I want to compare those things with Biden's entire 4 years, maybe Barack Obama's entire 8 years. And then we'll see where we land. So let's keep going with this interview, and then we'll share that list with y'all afterwards.
By making them thinking that they're voting against Black interests, and they end up voting against their own self-interest. And that's the sad part. Will the white population learn this time around? I don't think so, because they haven't learned in the past. They did the same thing after the Civil War by saying the reason you're impoverished is not because the planters of the South are a bunch of greedy robber barons, but because these Black people now, who you had working in the fields for free for 400 years, is now working for a salary. And they're taking away the salary you could have had. You know, you weren't working in that field for 400 years. You didn't have no salary picking cotton. So how you going to blame the Black man who you got to pay now to pick the cotton for taking your job when you never had that job to begin with? Matter of fact, most of you were unemployed then and didn't understand why you were unemployed, because I was working for free. You know, so now I'm taking the factories to Mexico. Then I'm going to blame the Mexican people, right? For importing something from a factory owned by a bunch of American shareholders.
See, and this is where I think that he's off on this one. Trump is not blaming Mexico for having factories and selling their products to America. It's not about blaming Canada or blaming China. It's about what makes sense for America. And you can't say that he's only blaming Mexico when I just gave the example of exactly what he did with John Deere. He called out a staple in the American economy, John Deere. He called them out at an event for John Deere. called them out in a live discussion and said, if you move your factories, I just heard y'all moving your factories. If you move them to Mexico, I'm going to increase your tariffs because that means you're taking jobs away from Americans. So I think Professor James Small is being a bit one-sided in how he's seeing this. He's more saying that like Trump's blaming Mexico or Trump's blaming China. I don't see it like that. Maybe I'm wrong. I see it as Trump willing to apply pressure on American companies as well and to raise the tariffs of a lot of countries that import their products to help the American economy. If Trump does it right and he's able to make money off of a lot of these tariffs with these countries and the government's able to raise money with these tariffs, then that should take a strain off of what we pay in our taxes, because obviously our taxes are what they use to make money. That's how the government makes money. They charge us taxes. So what's wrong with instead of increasing our taxes, how about you increase the tariffs, aka taxes, whatever you want to call it? How about you tax these other countries when they're bringing products in here? Because that's not fueling and feeding our economy. That's devaluing our dollar. No matter how cheap we pay for it, it's still devaluing our economy and not feeding our economy when we could be recirculating that money into American companies and providing American jobs as well.
And you still don't get it. Many of the factories in China, the stockholders are Americans. The shareholders are
But
Americans.
that's the whole joke about the tariff thing.
Right.
That's coming
I'm
up.
talking about the tariffs because they come right back to the question of the DEI, because you're trying to find a scapegoat.
Find anything.
And so you're now scapegoating black folks and saying that's the reason that so many white people are unemployed. Or that's the reason why you can't move up in your job. Not that you don't have the best education you could have gotten. Not that you haven't put forth the same effort that the black man has put forth to be on the job, because something called DEI. But let them remove it, because it didn't serve black people that much anyway to start with. Affirmative action never really served black people. And I think it'll be good for black people to see nothing much is going to change in their environment if they take away all of this stuff. Well, this will let black people see that it really didn't impact people like us. The person.
All right, so we're going to leave this convo there. You guys see maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I think it's a good time for me to kind of share my list with you guys as far as some of the things that I saw